Design QA is very much comes in the point of accessibility. It's basically understanding, so information systems needs to be accessible to everybody, whether you have a disability or you don't have a disability. And there was a world stat that said 15% of the world's population, that's by the World Bank, have a temporary or permanent disability, and it comes in many forms. It comes in the forms of cognitive, motor, auditory, speech. So everything, these are temporary and permanent. And accessibility is making sure that your website or your product is compliant with the WCAG, which is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of the CTO Show by TechByte. I'm Michael. My guest today is Shawn Shantilal, and we will be talking about the quality assurance as a process in the web development. Shawn, maybe we start sharing a little bit about you and your background. Where you live, how you came here.
Yeah, thanks Michael for having me. So a little bit about myself. I live in Singapore. I just came to Vietnam yesterday just to kind of speak to you about quality assurance. A little bit of background about myself in terms of education-wise. I went to Australia to study. So I did my mechanical engineering from University of New South Wales, and I moved into data science to do my master's at the University of Sydney. I came back after you took my university, and it was COVID. Everything was in lockdown, and that was the most difficult time to find a job. But we managed to, and I managed to secure a job at Huge, and that's when I joined them as a quality assurance analyst and a data analyst as well. And that's where we created something beautiful out of it, where we started the development hub for Huge in Vietnam. After Huge, I went on to work for a company called Essence Mediacom, and what does Essence Mediacom do? They basically do a lot of paid metrics and paid media for Google, looking at campaigns to see what drove uplift in terms of IPM, in terms of cost. And after Essence Mediacom, I went to TBWA, where I joined them as a data analytics and MarTech director. And that was very different as well, because the work was more about social listening and search engine optimization and analysis, and understanding what's really driving your customers in terms of what they're saying on their social media platforms, and turning those insights into strategic outcomes so that the client can use it and build strategies around it. And I'm also the founder for Curiouseyes, which is my very own company in QA, and that's what we're going to talk about. And that was something that I wanted to start from very much after Huge, and never got the chance until now. And what is Curiouseyes? Curiouseyes is very much an independent third-party QA firm, where we help companies that are building websites and products to kind of making sure that their product is met to the requirements of their users, and also making sure that websites are also done to accessibility standards, which is what we'll talk about later on in the show. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself and my background.
Thank you very much, Shawn, for sharing all those details about you. But I would like to ask you one more question about your background. How you learned to do the quality assurance?
That's a good question, because people say, Shawn had mechanical engineering, data science, where did QA come from? So when I joined Huge, I was very blessed and fortunate to have a mentor in Colombia, Ana Durango, who we love Ana. So she actually helped me through the process of learning how to be an excellent QA, and it's very much because of her I've got that experience to help the team in Vietnam grow. She taught me from the very basic of, and how did she teach me? She taught me accessibility testing, and it was very much from that my level grew. And she added layers on top of that, because she felt that accessibility testing was the very important and foundation needed to learn QA and then build from there.
Thank you very much. So my intention for today is to talk about the QA in general, quality assurance, the future for testing, and also our point of view, what it's changing and what's coming for the QA as a part of the tech industry. So let's start with the question that I ask myself very often. I need to ask as well. So how we see the difference between QC, quality control, and QA, quality assurance? What are
That's
those
that's a very good question, actually, Michael. So a lot of people actually, they don't understand the difference and they get mixed up between the two. They think QA is QC. But actually, quality check and quality assurance are two very different things. So quality check is very much relating to making sure that the end outcome is exactly as per requirements, but quality assurance is making sure processes are in place to ensure that we get to the QC part at the end. So it's very much about process driven. The QC part is very much about the outcome driven. And I think a lot of companies that mix up, they just say the term QC, but actually what they forget to do is build a quality assurance process in place first to get to that QC part. So they work very hand in hand. They don't work independently of each other. So that's my thought process of it. What do you think, Michael, on that one, actually?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing that I see as a main mistake in the quality assurance process is engaging QA team at the end of the development process, which is the first mistake. And actually, great segue to my next question. How do you see the proper process in the modern web development when we start engage quality people?
That's I think this is something that I learned a lot at Huge, actually, and this is very interesting. So development cycle works in a way where there is design, we develop, we check whether everything is in place, and then we do the cycle again. That's the Scrum methodology here. But everybody thinks that quality assurance team comes in at the very end. We just need to make sure that everything is met, everything is in place, we're done. But actually, it comes in at the very beginning. We need to check what needs to be done in terms of checking whether design is met to the quality standards, making sure everything is, in that sense, accessible or in the right way of getting the best user experience in terms of a creative, functional wise. So in terms of graphics, how things are, carousels are operating, in terms of design, is there a button on the right hand side, or product features, into making sure that we end up having the best user experience possible. Because I think a lot of people forget that if you don't have QA team from the very beginning to catch these errors with the creative team, what's going to happen is that your brand affinity and brand love for your customers will decrease over time, and they're going to start saying, forget it, I'm not going to bother with this information, or where because it's just where the information is coming from, or what I need from the site, because they just want, it's not fast enough, or things are broken, so they're just gonna, that love for your brand will just decrease over time. So QA needs to come from the very beginning to kind of sort these issues out and work with the creative team.
So, Shawn, if I can add to this,
Yes.
Being developer myself and having understanding how incomplete tickets we receive, I love the scenario, and there are someone who will be checking if I did my work well, is coming before me and checking if they understand what is supposed to be done. So
Yes.
this is actually improving the workflow, improving the acceptance criteria for
Yes.
a given ticket, as well as kind of helping product people. So they quite often are super loaded and they have other
Yes.
stuff, and they forget, the developer may ask this question, need to know this before we start
Yes.
going into work. So I definitely feel that it's better for especially small organizations
Yes.
to engage QA team before engineers.
Agree. Actually, Michael, you raise a very interesting point, because it's true, when the QA team understands from the creative team how certain functions or how certain components of the site works, they're able to write the testing criteria better. And when they do that, they understand when the developers develop, they understand what needs to improve, what can be improved to kind of make it more user experience, which is exactly, it's all part of a team. It's a very nice, well-oiled machine in that sense.
Yeah, and let's go even deeper on
Let's
this.
go.
So do you think that the QA team should correct the tickets? Should write the tickets?
the QA team should write the tickets. It's very good that the QA team writes. They understand the functionality of the component that we're going to build. The developers develop it, and the QAs will test it because they have a criteria to follow. They understand how the component works based on the creative team. They also understand the development point of view. So it's kind of both ways. They're kind of in between non-tech and technical. So they bring both aspects to it, where what can be feasible from a technical point, but what can be creative and beautiful enough from a UI UX point of view. So it kind of merges very nicely together. So I think it's a very good thing that the QA team should write the tickets and also execute the testing at the end of the day. Yeah.
Cool. And we are definitely on the same page that they need to be before development.
Yes,
and
correct.
So what about QA, design QA?
That's fantastic. That is a topic I wanted to talk about for a while, actually. So design QA is very much comes in the point of accessibility. And
let's stop here. Let's first explain what accessibility is. It's like,
for those of you who don't know what accessibility is, it's basically understanding. So information systems needs to be accessible to everybody, whether you have a disability or you don't have a disability. And there was a world stat that said 15% of the world's population, that's by the World Bank, have a temporary or permanent disability, and it comes in many forms. It comes in the forms of cognitive, motor, auditory, speech. So everything, these are temporary and permanent. And accessibility is making sure that your website or your product is compliant with the WCAG, which is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And that's what accessibility is. It's just ensuring that your website or your product that you're developing is meant for everybody. That's information systems.
Yes, I agree. And I will provoke you with a question that I personally disagree. So what if I don't care about those 15%? I will do the website for the 85%.
That's a good point. And unfortunately, there are repercussions to it. And you have to be prepared for the repercussions. There are financial. There will be financial repercussions. If you don't care about it so much, sure, but when you develop a site and when it comes to, let's say you want to change a component, or when you want to change a certain design layout, that's going to affect you financially. But more importantly, what's going to happen is that there could be legal implications. So I think, Michael, you and I know that we worked for a company who actually had one of our clients actually paid us money to go and look at our entire site to make sure that all their components are accessible. And their important point was that they wanted to be legally compliant because they didn't want any repercussions from a legal standpoint. I believe in Australia they have it in their legislation that all websites need to be compliant with the AA standard, which is part of the WCAG guidelines. So we actually looked at that, and so the importance of it is, even if you don't care, there will be repercussions. And it's also being human decency that we don't forget that 15%, and they're part of humanity. So we need to include them into seeing things the way we see things.
Absolutely, but I would even add a little bit more on this. So if you think about accessibility as a standard of the work that QA team is doing, this standard is very well organized and gives you a methodical approach to testing, right?
Yes,
so
very
tell
true.
me about this.
Very true. Actually, implementing accessibility is already giving you a QA structure. So, for example, when you do design QA, from the very beginning, you're looking at color contrast ratios, and color contrast ratios need to be accepted with the WCAG guidelines. You're also looking at minimum font size. So I know a lot of companies love to do this. They love to have their terms and conditions at the very bottom of the page at 8 pixels, and you'll be like, that is too small. Guys, listen. Anyway, nobody reads the T and Cs, but we need to make them slightly bigger. So like 10 pixels, 11 pixels are compliant with the WCAG standard. So that supports the design QA. But when it comes to the development side, you have a whole range of it. You will need to look at font size, dimensions, font size, dimensions, WCAG, color contrast ratios, the console log errors. You're also looking at code to ensure that it's properly structured. So we're not breaking, nothing breaks while your user is clicking on something. It's all very thought out and very put in place. So accessibility actually already helps you put a process in place.
Absolutely. And what about other things? Maybe before we go, other requirements on accessibility, if you can briefly touch on the standards. AA, AAA. What's this thing?
Okay, so there are three standards to it: single A, double A, triple A. Think of it like batteries, for example. So A is the most broad of it all, very generic. It doesn't really meet the standards, but WCAG double A standard reaches most of it. It gives us a little bit of flexibility between design and development. And a company like Google is very well at doing this. They have their own accessibility team within Google. So a lot of the big names and the tech giants have their own team to look into accessibility standard, and they comply with the AA standard because most legislations in governments touch on AA. AAA is very drastic. So AAA are more for government and educational websites because that it needs to hit the entire population. So AAA, for example, like when you watch a video, for example, AAA standard means you have to have sign language in a AAA compliant video. So that is what the standards are. AAA is very drastic. Single A is very on the other end of the spectrum. So double A gives you that very nice middle ground for accessibility standard.
Okay, what about the users that hate mouse and they use just the keyboard? This is also related to accessibility, right?
Actually, you make a good point. Keyboard is a very important thing because you must be able, when developers develop, you must be able, and when the QAs test it, the user must be able to access the entire web page with the mouse or a tab function or your up arrow or your left. So you must have the same experience without using a mouse. And that's making sure alt text is in place. Oh, that brings, actually when I say alt text, that brings us to screen readers, for example. When you code and when the developers code, we must enable that certain informative images have an alt text label. And this is because sometimes when you have a visual impairment, you won't be able to see the image, and sometimes we can portray information through visuals, and that's how you make your site more dynamic, more creative. But for someone who has a visual impairment is not going to see that, so the only way is to have an alt text tag to have a short punchy sentence that describes what the image is about. So when someone turns on a screen reader, they'll be able to understand, I understand what this image is. Is it a poster of a promotional ad? You don't want to miss that. So that is something important from a screen reader point of view. But that also goes back into keyboard access, right? So the tabbing function, it means to move from left to right, up to top to bottom in a hierarchical manner, because you can't have the tabbing index go everywhere and jumping everywhere. And this is something I've noticed in most companies don't pay attention to. When you start to click tab and then they jump from left to right to left to right, and then you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, where am I going? So it needs to be in hierarchical order, and this is very, very important. So you make a very good point, Michael, that keyboard functionality without using a mouse, super key to it.
Yeah, and another part of the design, which is the focus state of elements, right? So this is something that no one has.
Exactly, focus states of elements, exactly. It's, when you hover over state, the active state, when you hover over it, it changes to a different color. Nobody pays attention to it. But these things are more than just accessibility, actually. It brings creativity to your website. And Google, for example, I can use Google as an example because, for example, GPay, when you hover over a CTA button, it changes from a light blue to a dark blue. It's those minute details that are exceptional, and it's compliant, plus it gives dynamic to a website. So yeah, you make a very good point.
I can give a secret to our audience. Shawn worked on this project.
Yes, I did.
In particular.
I did.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And the high standards there.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing, and
Completely.
maybe this should lead us to talk about the general situation, about the awareness,
Yeah.
about accessibility requirements, and the quality of the web work that you see.
Yeah, I think right now the current situation is that people don't really know and not aware of accessibility standards, and if people know about it, they don't know what the true understanding of accessibility is, and they don't know how to implement it. And I think, for example, I recently helped a learning company. They have a website that's set up, and it's about purchasing educational courses online. And they recently revamped their website, which is in a bit of a struggle at the moment and challenging for them, because initially they didn't have any thought of accessibility. They designed based on design. And today what's happening is that we want to read this guy has come to me and asked me, Shawn, I need to change this website. This is really bad, some components. But the problem is code's not done well. Things are not accessible. And it takes a lot more time, so maintenance costs. So what happens is really today we require a mind shift. And when I mean mind shift, it's really a perception. I know Joe Gestart, which is a UI inclusivity and diversion expert, he actually said, if you don't intentionally like implement, you will unintentionally not implement. So it's like kind of it's contradicting, but it's not contradicting. It's more like you don't realize that the importance of it. You will just forget about it, and if you say I'll do it later, you'll completely forget about it. So I think the situation is it's needed that we look at our websites and we look at our products to see how we can improve it, to include that 15% at the end of the day, because now
include
it's
this 15%, and also avoid redoing the whole site.
Exactly.
Right? And this is actually from my experience. I spoke with several startup founders. They were saying, "Oh, why do we need QA? What's the return on investment?" So the devs will do, designer will do, and it's okay.
It's you can't have development team check their own work. It's like I said earlier, right? Own self check own self. It's a phrase that we use a lot in Singapore. You can't get somebody to check their own work. So you need somebody neutral, a third party, to come in to look at it and say, listen, this is something we need to improve. And the developers learn a lot as well. It's not just a QA team. You work together as a team to build an amazing product for your client. So you don't see the initial investment, you don't see the return of investment initially. Comes in at a later stage because your maintenance cost goes down. Legally, you don't have any legal implications. And even on a technological standpoint, it's easier to create new components because this code is structured well. Everything is done prim and proper, and so you will have an easier time trying to redevelop and recreate new components as well.
Okay, and one more thing which I remember very much is about the organic search results, how they are impacted by the properly built sites, accessible sites.
So actually, Michael, you make a good point, actually. If you don't have accessibility implemented into your code, it affects your search engine optimization. And what this means is when you go and search for your website, you realize that your link is going lower and lower and lower, and soon it'll be even to the next page or the third page. So Google looks into this, and it takes really a key importance into accessibility and search engine optimization. It works hand in hand. We have witnessed this firsthand, where we've seen our clients' page decrease along the way. So we know this happens. So please, to everybody, try to implement accessibility, and it will benefit your search engine optimization in the long run. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and as well the clarity of the code,
Yes,
which we spoke.
correct.
So this is very important. So thank you very much, Shawn, for sharing all those insights. It's super important for all the web developers and the teams working around the web products. The next section of the podcast is actually a set of standard questions that we ask all our guests. You know them.
I do. I've heard it.
Let me start with your favorite tech tool. What's the thing that you like the most?
Notion. I love Notion. I think you introduced me to Notion actually, Michael. So Notion is great. I think it's a very good tool that has very easy to use. You can keep track of all your work and what you need to do. But I think it's amazing for teams as well to use a lot of, and now they've implemented Notion AI, which is great in some sense because it helps you even finish up some of your notes while you're writing. So Notion's my favorite. But recently I've been using a lot of OpenAI, playing around with prompt engineering, but that's a different topic anyway altogether.
Definitely different topic. We can do a separate recording on this. But I think everyone is doing on AI, so we can touch something maybe more data related on AI. This is very interesting stuff. Okay, the next question is about you do what you do. If you will be pursuing different career path, what will be your job? Mechanical engineering?
Yeah, I think I would be a pilot. I love planes and I love to fly. This was a dream as a kid, and actually I had the opportunity after I finished my military service. I had the opportunity to sign on as a pilot, but I did not take that opportunity. Sometimes I regret a little bit, but it's okay. I think
we share this regret.
Yeah,
and we share this love for planes.
Yes, we do.
The next question is, what are you the most grateful for in general in life?
I think I have a very good support system and very good mentors around me, and I'm very grateful for that. I think without even parents, my mom and dad, who are very supportive and very loving, I think I'm grateful for them. I'm also grateful for yourself, Michael, who have actually mentored me through my career. And I think I've got great support and great mentors. So I'm very grateful to all these people who have supported me through my career journey. So yeah, a lot to be grateful for actually.
Thank you very much, and I'm super proud of you as
thank you very much.
So
thank you very much.
Your career path is approved. My advice is maybe you're a small partner.
Yeah.
And the final question is actually, what is the best advice you ever received?
I think well, I resonate a lot with this. So I think recently I've heard this phrase where don't rush into things. Take your time to think about what you want to do in life. Think about what you want to achieve in life, and it's not all about chasing the corporate ladder for that matter. It's about doing something bigger and doing what you feel right. And I feel a lot of people are starting to understand this. So my best advice is if you're going through a difficult period in life, or if you're struggling in life, take time to understand where you are. Don't rush, sit down, relax, then go again. And I think, Michael, you actually spoke to me about this. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
I think we spoke recently, and you also reminded me that it's important to take time in life to understand what's important, and to understand what you really want to do in life and move forward ahead with that. So yes.
Definitely realize who you really are.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, we agree. Thank you very much, Shawn.
Thanks, Michael.